it's a very much a blank canvas. It's like a 900 way adjustable seat. There's 899 ways to be uncomfortable.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
It's me, Vicki.
That's right. Coming out of her COVID-induced funk. Hopefully, we'll see. We have a guest, Miss Vicki. I don't know what his title is. I forgot to ask before we got started. I'm going to go with the GRM Grandish Poobah. I don't know.
No, not even. I thank you. But so technically, my business. Well, let's see. I haven't even pulled out a business card for a while. I think my business cards say production manager and art director. Yes, my name is JG Pasterjak. I am going on. Actually, I just passed year 32 of my employment with Grassroots Motorsports magazine and Classic Motorsport magazine, and all of the things we do at the company that is titled Motorsport Marketing, whether it be our events or our tours or all the publications and multimedia stuff we produce. But yeah, at the end of the day, I am the one responsible for making sure that the physical product actually gets produced and printed. But we're a small company, so the things we all actually do, there's a lot of crossover in departments, and there's very little specialization and a lot of hard work with all of us, to be honest.
So maybe the ish is a little bigger than I had typed in my document, but
sure,
ish.
Yeah.
It's close. It's close. It's good. You're the how about this? You're the public face of Grassroots Motorsports.
Oh, I appreciate that too, and I may be the public face within certain segments, but I think all of us have kind of realized that because we're a small company and because I mean, look, I'm paying my mortgage this way, so this is a business, but this is also how I live my life. I mean, this is something that if I was working somewhere else, I would still be in this world. So yes, we are squeaking out a living from being in this world, but we are also part of this world as well. And I think we've all done a good job, not because we've had to, just because that's how we sort of choose to live, at being public figures within this industry. So, for example, right now, our publisher, Tim Suttard, who is the guest of honor at the Vintage Triumph convention that's taking place in Chicago right now. His son, now we're in the second generation. Yep. Tom Suttard he's working with the SCCA on some rules committees, as am I on some stuff. David Wallens was the chairman of the British Motor Trade Federation for a while, our editor. So yeah, I mean, we all have our faces in public in various markets, but I to some extent I think they'd probably be there anyway, even if we weren't getting a paycheck doing this.
How did you get started with this?
So I started autocrossing when I was 16. I mean, so literally my history kind of parallels that of the magazine. I grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida, in about early 1985. I was born in 1970. So I'm 15 and I'm just kind of discovering cars. And we had this really, really cool independent bookstore in St. Pete. And they had like all these cool magazines from all over the world, and like they even got like distribution of like all these cool like punk rock zines and independent magazines for every hobby. And they had this magazine called Auto X that, because at the time I was like reading Car and Driver and Road and Track and all the big books. And I picked up this magazine called Auto X, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is like real people doing real stuff with cars that they built themselves. And it took this really hands-on, really sort of democratized approach to motorsports. And, it talked a lot about like this sport of autocrossing that I had no idea what it was at the time. So, literally I remember like riding around in the back of the driver's ed car in high school, like reading these copies of Auto X, thinking like, okay, this is how I want to live my automotive life. And so as soon as I was old enough, I got enough money together to start doing some autocrossing and forging my parents' name on minor waivers to get into SCCA events, and doing a little bit of autocrossing with the Firebird that I had in high school, and eventually met the publishers of Auto X, which was at the time transitioning from just a magazine called Auto X to a magazine called Auto X and Grassroots Motorsports, because they happened to be in Florida too. And so this was, by this time, this was like 88, 89. And I was just starting college, and, met the publishers because they were putting some events on, and we were kind of doing stuff in, they were on the East Coast of Florida. I was on the West Coast, but we'd cross paths from here and there. So started helping them out with some of their projects because, I was cheap available labor. And at some point I just remember talking to Margie Sutter, who one of the Tim's wife, co-owner of the magazine. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna come work for you guys. And she was like, we're not really hiring anybody. And I said, no, I wasn't like asking. I'm just like saying a thing that's going to happen. And so I moved over to Daytona in 1990 and started working there, as a glorified intern basically. And they've not found a reason to ask me to leave yet. So that's kind of how I started. I mean, it sounds hokey to say that like the magazine I grew up reading and sort of dreamed of my automotive life being that way, I'm now getting to kind of shape what that means to other people who are like me and just discovering this. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a position I do not take lightly, but at the same time, it's a little absurd and a little insane to think that that's kind of how things all worked out. Like, not many people get that opportunity. I don't think, and I'm well aware of that, and very humbled by the fact that I've had that opportunity.
So part of the role that I have as host is I have to explain certain things to our listeners, and I think we owe it to them. Now, you said you were at this thing called a bookstore. Can we go into what those are and what they consist of? Because I'm not sure many of them have ever seen one of these things.
Yeah, so we're all familiar with, like, I'm sure, Barnes and Noble and Borders and these big corporate bookstores, which are, don't get me wrong, are great. Like I wish we would have had stuff like that when I was growing up, because I
would have found this magazine.
Well, yeah, but to some extent, some big cities still have them, but for a lot of people, like they've lost this independent bookstore. And this place, I remember, it was called the Polling Place. It was in South Pasadena, Florida. And as it turns out, I only found this out a few years ago. A friend of mine from high school, her parents own the place, and like we're going to high school every day, and I'm going to her parents' bookstore and reading stuff. And it turns out that her folks owned it. But anyway, the cool thing about this place was, I mean, they had all the regular catalog of books and stuff, but they had literally magazines from all over the world, and like I don't know how they were getting them. I don't know, what connection they had, but like, do you want a magazine about fighter jets from Germany? Shit, no problem. They got it. And they also had a lot of like really cool independent music magazines, like just stuff that people were photocopying off in their basement 300 copies of and sending them out to record stores and stuff. Like they would get their hands on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like there was just a real cool. It was neat that I discovered the magazine there because the aesthetic of the place very much matched the aesthetic of the magazine.
Mhm.
And I think the aesthetic of it at the time, and I think this persists, is nobody has told us that this is not something we're supposed to be able to do. So we're just going to go ahead and do it.
Sure.
And that's, I think, what really appealed to me about the magazine. And you know, Tim and Margie didn't really have any experience in publishing prior to that. Tim literally went to a couple autocrosses, decided that was something he liked, and he was going to make a magazine about it because there wasn't a magazine out there, and he wanted more information. So, I mean, how much more punk rock can you get than that? Than like inventing your own product to serve a market that doesn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So we didn't start a magazine; we started a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There was some, but you know, we figured we were learning. We started this after our second race, so.
Oh wow! But see, like that's something I think that people now really need to appreciate is like it is easier than ever to actually publish your thoughts and feelings out there right now.
Mhm.
And that's something that we haven't always had access to. I mean, the downside of that is any idiot can do it, but to some extent, I think the cream rises to the top a little bit. I mean, some crap sneaks through, but that just reminds you that you have to be a savvy consumer of media, and in general, you know, it's way easier. I never thought I'd get to the point where, rather than not being able to find some media I want to consume, I can't decide between all of the choices of what media to consume.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's everybody was complaining about a cable bill, and now we've got 15 different subscription services.
Yeah.
Whatever. But anyway, that doesn't help anybody get better at racing. So one of the things I like about the magazine, one of the things I like about the content you do, which is not only written in the magazine, but especially articles and projects you guys have on your website and YouTube channel, is you guys don't just write about it, you actually do it. So could we just, for those who didn't start when you started, how did your racing and driving experience, how has it progressed through the years, and what are you currently into at this point?
Yeah, so I always wanted to compete something. I've always been just sort of a naturally competitive guy. You know, grew up in various sports in high school and in college, and just sort of had this attitude that if I was going to do something, I may as well, even if I was terrible at it, at least competing at it, I would know the level of terrible that I was instead of always having to wonder about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was, let's say, I would have been 14, the St. Pete Grand Prix had its first year, and I went down I was like into cars, just sort of in a general way. Before you can drive, like you really don't know exactly how you're into cars, because you haven't really experienced them as anything but this sort of abstract concept that, you know, you hop in the back when your parents are driving. And I remember going to the St. Pete Grand Prix, like my folks dropped me off downtown, and I had like the cheapest ticket there was. And the cool thing is, like, when you're 14 at a race, you can just kind of walk places and nobody really bothers you. So I ended up like pretty much going wherever I wanted to. Plus, it was the first year and security was terrible. So that was sort of my first exposure to motorsport and competition. And like I remember the featured event of the weekend was Trans Am, and I remember like being in the paddock as the Trans Am cars went by and just sort of feeling the ground shake and looking at them, and they looked just sort of absolutely comical, but they had this really sort of cartoonish but also heavily industrial and purposeful presence about them. And the people that drove them, by and large, like, they weren't these sort of distant, you know, European, like the guys you see on TV driving Indy cars and Formula One that are just sort of making a speech while somebody puts different hats on them. They were these sort of regular people who were getting in the car filthy and then getting out of the car sweaty and filthy and fixing whatever was wrong with it, then getting back in the car. And that was when I kind of decided, like, okay, this is awesome, and I want to race cars. Like
I have those cartoon moon eyes.
yeah, like this just everything about this just looks really, really cool. Like there is no separation. That was kind of one cool thing about it, was there was no separation between the drivers and the mechanics and the crew people and even the safety. Like it was like just all this one group of people that seemed to be there for like a common goal. And you would walk through the paddock, like you couldn't really tell who was who until somebody put on a driver's suit and got in the car, because there was just this sort of very communal and clubby aspect about it, but also it was being done at a very high level. And there was something really, really cool about that, and something very hands-on. Like there were very few people driving the cars that didn't know a lot about the cars as well, and I really respected that. So yeah, that's kind of when I decided, okay, I want to go racing at some point. And I think I somehow talked my folks into paying for like a half-day driving school when I was like 18 at a kind of, it wasn't even like Skip Barber. It was like those Waffle Houses that like the Waffle House closes, so they change it to like Wassel House, so they like put like two S's up there. So like it was that kind of thing. It was like somebody that had bought like a driver's school that had closed down and was still doing it at just a real sketchy level. So I got my folks to like somehow pay for like a half day of one of those, and went and drove some Formula. They weren't even Formula Fords, they were like Formula Mords or something. And I was like, and did really, really well. It just kind of sort of, I had basically like read every article about how to drive fast, and it actually, when I finally got into a car to go fast, like everything kind of made sense. So I seemed to show a little bit of skill for it, and then started autocrossing as much as I could, and to the point where like literally I was like waiting tables at Chili's all week, and then I would get off of a shift at 12:30 Saturday night and sleep for 4 hours and get up at 4:30 in the morning and drive for 3 hours to autocross somewhere the next day, and buying used tires from people. So that was kind of how I started. And except for the fact that I have a little bit nicer place to work on the cars in between the events, it's kind of still the same thing. I might get a hotel a little more often now than I did back then.
Yeah.
But it's kind of still the same thing. And I've gotten the opportunity to drive stuff that I never would have, and do stuff like race at the Nürburgring and run in like 25 hours of Thunderhill, and do stuff that I probably never would have gotten the opportunity to do if I was not in the media position that I was in. Yeah, so I think it's all probably, ultimately this is all just like a long con to drive more cars, is what it comes down to.
So
playing the long game.
You so you rent seats?
Yeah, from
or you have
both. At any given time, I am in charge of a couple of project cars that we are writing about. Right now, we're sort of coming to the end of an editorial cycle on a C5 Corvette that we've had for about 4 years, that has been autocross car, time trial car, track car. It's been actually one of our longest running projects ever, and had a lot of success in that. And then right when we were we literally had a handshake deal with a buyer. We were ready to move on to the next thing. We took it to our test track for one last photo and video shoot, and snapped a rod in half. So, yeah, exactly right. And it was a newish motor too. So it's actually right now sitting in my carport with no motor in it, and the motor's been sent back to the builder, and they are fixing it under warranty. So it's delayed that process a little bit, but I'll get an extra story out of it. So that's exciting. I also have a 1991 Toyota Mr2 that is had for about 8 years. It's my personal car. I've been a huge Mr2 fan forever, and the plan with that car is it was kind of going to be a bridge between the Corvette and the next project car that I'm working on. I'm just going to do some quick stuff to it, track prep it, do some track and autocross stuff with it, and accidentally caught it on fire at a track night in America a few weeks ago. So that was very exciting.
And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah,
soon.
I got to do my bailout practice there, but so that is now getting engine swap. That essentially turned it from a quickie, let's do a couple of stories and talk about prepping the car, to a little more of a longy. Here's an engine swap story, and here's how to come back from after you set your engine bay on fire. And then my next big project, well, actually this sort of turned into my next big project, but my big project after that was going back to my roots of discovering the sport. Last December, purchased a car that had formerly run in the American Speed Association series, the ASA series. It's a tube frame former stock car that we're going to be turning into a road course car. So
that
probably
has to turn both ways, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so probably the easiest way to describe that is it's going to be kind of an outlaw TA2 car. It's a tube frame chassis, but the chassis itself is symmetrical. There's no offset in the chassis. Some of the suspension pieces that are on it currently are offset for oval track racing, but it's all stuff that's going to get replaced anyway. And yeah, should be about 2,600 pounds, LS powered, so 500-ish horsepower, 10-inch wide NASCAR slicks. Yeah, dog ring 4-speed. It should be a heck of a lot of fun, and that's really looking forward to. This is going to be sort of my first. Well, I had a Formula car for a while, but this is going to be really my first purpose-built, not production-based race car. And what it's just kind of sat in my garage so far. I've done a lot of measuring and sort of preliminary stuff for when we actually start turning wrenches. But what's going to end up happening is it's like, it's very much a blank canvas. It's like a 900 way adjustable seat. There's 899 ways to be uncomfortable, but you have a lot of ways to make things go wrong with something like this, because everything is adjustable, everything is customizable. If you want different suspension geometry, it is a sawzall and a welder away from being whatever shape, whatever configuration you want. You can do some very awful things very quickly. So it's going to really be a learning process, and as I'm learning, so are the readers, and that's kind of the exciting part about the job, I think.
I think Colin Chapman said if you give the ability to adjust something to the public, they will adjust it poorly.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly I like to think I have a little bit of knowledge that I've gained at this point, but I mean, judging by the fact that I managed to set myself on fire, I am certainly not immune from making bad decisions. So,
So do you have? And we may have asked this question already, but I'm just going to ask it just in case.
Yeah.
Do you have a person or a group that is steady with you? Like, I know you probably have people you kind of float in and out with, but do you have a semi-formed team?
Not really. I mean, we have whatever the sort of current stable of project cars is at the magazine, and we tend to kind of hop in and out of each other's cars. We do have, like, we had Volkswagen Fox that we were running some lemons and chump car events with, and I would hop in and out of that when they needed more drivers. Right now we've got a V6 Miata that we're going to be running some different endurance series with, and I'll probably hop into that a little bit. So we have, a few people that we work with sort of as a company. Aside from that, I really kind of enjoy taking invitations from different people and getting to drive different stuff and do it in different places. On one hand, it's been really difficult for me over the years to, like, commit to a series and run for points somewhere, but I'm kind of okay because I get to trade that for the ability to jump into a very diverse group of things and meet a bunch of different people and see a bunch of different approaches, and you learn something from all of them. Sometimes you don't learn positive things from them, but everything you learn is something that you either want to repeat or you want to make sure to never repeat. So, which is honestly, most of the experiences I've had have been overwhelmingly positive. And I would say for the situation that we're in, for us to have multiple race teams would be tough. So we sort of have one in-house team that does endurance stuff. We've kind of got, I kind of specialize in autocross and time attack stuff. Although I do quite a bit of road racing too, but my thing tends to be autocross and time attack, and that's kind of the world that I exist in pretty well. And Tom kind of handles the endurance racing stuff because he really digs that. He loves the the logistical end of things and mapping out strategies, and that's something that really appeals to him. So we've sort of balanced and managed to cover all the bases sort of organically within the company, and then we still get the opportunity to hop into other stuff once in a while and do cool things with it.
You get to do a bunch, but is there any bucket list items, tracks or series or events that you're like, I still need to go do that?
Yeah, I mean, I got to race at the Nürburgring, and it's really tough to have anything on your bucket list after that. That was something that I still have a hard to like. I wish I could do it again because I know that I wasn't in the moment enough when it was happening to enjoy it on the level that I think I should have. You know what I mean? Like, you're never prepared for something like that. There's still stuff that I would say a lot of the stuff on my bucket list is stuff that I think I probably did once kind of half-assed or maybe had some trouble with and wish I could go back with like my current level of experience and my current skill set. I would love the chance. I have not run a road race at Road Atlanta for quite a while, and that's one of my favorite tracks. I would love to go back there and run wheel to wheel in something. I've had honestly nothing but good experiences there, but that's the kind of track that every time you run it, whether it's real or even on a sim, like, you kind of learn something. So I would love the chance to do that again. There's a track. So there was a track. Actually, there's two tracks that I've run, like track days at press events that I would love to compete on somehow. One of them is Pacific Raceways outside of Seattle,
right? And
I haven't been there for, God, I mean, if you told me it was 20 years, I'd believe you. I was there for some kind of a tire launch, and it was. So if anybody's seen the film version of The Art of Racing in the Rain, a lot of the footage, especially the footage at the end, that's Pacific Raceways, and it's absolutely beautiful. And it's like, it's kind of not like any other track that I've ever been to, in that there's scenery that of course, Florida, we don't really experience, and part of it is built on an old drag strip, so you get like this sort of dual purpose thing where it's like, oh, we never really intended for there to be a road course here, but let's figure out a way to do it. And there's just really cool sight lines. So that's a place I'd like to actually compete, whether it be a time attack or a road race. And there's another track that I did. In fact, I did the launch of the Civic Type R, the most recent Civic Type R, at this track in Montreal called
Mont Tremblant.
No. It's in fact, you've probably never heard of this place. It's called Circuit ICAR, ICAR. Nope. I think one of the Canadian NASCAR series is actually there, like this weekend or just this past weekend. And it's this track that it's an old airport, and they literally just like threw some curbs down and painted some lines and made a track, and it's really fun. Like, whoever designed it did a fantastic job. There's no part of it that's particularly scary. It's just the kind of track that you could go out on and go like 11 tenths everywhere. It's not really particularly fast. It's like a third and fourth gear kind of thing. And I'd love to run like a time attack on that in something just really fast and hairy and just, it's the kind of track that it's almost like if you ever wanted to run an autocross, but it was all third and fourth gear. Like you can just
Right.
absolutely drive the wheels off something. So I would love to go back there and do something competitive. And there's still tracks in the US that for whatever reason I just have never run at. I've never driven AMP. I don't know how that's never happened. I've never driven Barber for whatever
Wow.
weird reason. Yeah. Just like whatever like weird scheduling, things that I just end up not going. So yeah, I mean there's still definitely some tracks that I would love to check off in something or another. I've actually never driven the full Pocono road course. I've driven,
There's about
like,
20 of them.
well, like I've driven like just the infield. I've never driven anything that
Uses the banks.
any of the banks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never driven Watkins Glen. That's
Ah!
right. I know. So yeah, that's a track I would love to get to at some point. So yeah, despite the fact that I've got miles at some pretty interesting and diverse places. How many people have you ever met that can ever say they drove the Gotland Ring on the little island in the bay, in the Gulf of Sweden or whatever it is up there?
One so far.
Right. So, but I've never driven the Glen. So yeah, I've checked some really cool boxes, but I think there's some fairly significant ones that I've missed, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, there's certain things that we're good at, and if you're looking to do racing and do it fully whole ass, that would be one thing we specialize in. So just let us know. And, we don't half-ass anything. We go whole ass or nothing at all. So.
So when you're behind the wheel, I mean, what do you say to yourself for encouragement? Do you have a motto, or do you have something that you tell yourself? We all do.
Yeah. So I think some of the most important things that I've learned, and actually it's funny you mentioned that, because I literally just wrote a story called like 5 things I wish I could have told myself 30 years ago, or something along those lines. That it'll be coming out in the next issue of Grassroots Motorsports magazine. It's going to be in the November issue, so that'll be out in about a month or so. But so I actually had to sit down and consciously think about a lot of this stuff recently, and I think some of the things that I came up with were, first off, the car is always better than you. Like the car has a certain performance envelope that it is capable of, and the absolute best you will ever be able to do is 100%. You can never exceed that capability of the car. So all you can really do is come as close to the actual abilities of the car as you can. And I think the way that translates into your actions is the less work you can do behind the wheel, the better off you're going to be. Every time you make a control input, you're essentially preventing the car from doing something else. So every time you turn the wheel, every time you hit the brakes, every time you hit the throttle, you are creating action that is preventing other action. So the absolute minimum amount of work that you can do, which is really, I think, just a great approach to life in general. Like the least amount you can do to be successful is what will make you the most successful behind the wheel of a car. And I think that particularly is important on the extreme ends of performance, whether it's a very fast car with a lot of horsepower, constantly trying to manage, or a very slow car with very little horsepower that you're constantly trying to manage that friction circle. The as little work as you can get away with doing, I think is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's really good. I never thought about it that way.
So
I was thinking your one for right now would be fire bad, something simple.
that is certainly it is. Let me open the story, because I had some good ones in here. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, cars always work. Cars always better than you. Oh, here. So along those same lines, I at this point in my life, especially as I get a little bit older and things start to hurt more, I cannot overstate enough the importance of actually being comfortable behind the wheel. If you are not physically in the ideal position to operate that car, you are not going to operate it in an ideal fashion. I mean, there's a reason that, professional athletes have all their gear custom fitted to them because it works better. And the less you have to concentrate on, oh, this thing is stabbing me in the back, or I got to flex my ankle in a funny way to get full throttle or full clutch or whatever. Like, dude, spend instead of spending a night doing something that matters less, like spend a couple of nights in the shop making the car fit you, and it will pay off huge,
including getting in and getting out.
Yeah, and the good segue to that. Like that was one thing. So I did recently have a fire event, and while I can certainly say that there are a lot of things that I did very, very wrong. I was not wearing a full enough safety kit. I mean, I had the helmet and the Hans, but I also had shorts and a t-shirt because it was a non-competitive track event. But as Charles Espinal said after he had his fire, fire is the exact same temperature in a race or at a track day. So that was probably something that I'm glad I am still here to be able to teach that lesson instead of being that lesson. But yeah, did not have enough personal safety gear on. Probably shouldn't have prepared the car in such a way that there was a single point of failure that could have caused a fluid fire. Probably should have had additional points of failure involved. As I look back on stuff I've done, could have done stuff better, but also I'd been successful with doing the same thing before. But because something doesn't burst into flames doesn't mean it was safe, just means you got away with it. So, but the thing that I think I did absolutely right in the whole situation was I had practiced my bailouts. And so to describe the actual situation, I was going down the back straight at Daytona, 130, 135 miles an hour, braked for the bus stop, and it's track day, so you're constantly checking your mirrors. And as I braked, I saw fire shooting out of the engine cover, which was behind me. It was a Toyota MR2, so fire was behind me, and thought for a second, okay, so I'm on fire. This is suboptimal. Immediately, my eyes shot up to the next corner position, which I knew was in the outside of the bus stop, off to the left of the bus stop after the first entry. So I kind of locked eyes on that corner position, continued my braking right down to directly in front of the wall opening, right in front of that corner position, and even made sure to park on sort of some sand instead of some dry grass that was right next to there. And then went through my bailout procedure, which was, door open, wheel off, belts off, put my left hand here, put my right hand here, and hop out. And everything worked exactly as I had practiced, and I was out of the car within a few seconds, and was actually kind of thinking to myself, wow, that went surprisingly well, before I realized, like, oh, my car is still on fire. I should probably grab a fire extinguisher now. And begin the process of extinguishing the car. And then a bunch more dudes with fire extinguishers showed up, and they certainly helped. But yeah, I would say if there was something I want everybody to learn from the stuff I did wrong, even though I did not really pay as much as like my friend Mark Petronas did for doing everything right. Unfortunately, Mark did everything right, and he still was in a very bad situation. I did everything wrong and avoided a bad situation. But the one thing I did right was I had spent some time, and not even a lot of time, once a week, I would hop in the car and do a few bailouts. And every time I made a change to the car, when I put different belts or a different seat in it, I would make sure to increase the amount of practice bails I did. But when it actually happened, there was no panic, there was no confusion. Everything just sort of happened exactly how I had practiced it. And there was never a moment when I was wondering what I needed to do next, because I'd been through it all. So
right.
That was if there was something that I actually managed to do right, that I would like to impart to people, it's practice getting the hell out of your car in a hurry, because it's the cars we drive, it's not always easy. A lot of us drive very small cars with very tall seats and very low seats and very constrictive belts. And just the difference between getting out of your car with a Hans on and without a Hans on can be very different. Most of the time I will come back to the pits and I will exit the car after having taken off my helmet and my Hans, which is a very different experience than getting out fully kitted. So yeah, practice paid off in that case.
That's a good lesson learned.
Yeah.
So what was a failure in the car?
There was an oil line that ran from the oil cooler adapter to the oil cooler, and it went sort of over the exhaust, and it was being restrained by a metal bracket that failed somehow. I think just through fatigue and the fact that it's a 30-year-old car, and it was a Toyota bracket that was, I think, holding something on a different part of the engine that I repurposed for this. And I think just 30 years of vibration, it cracked, and it allowed the oil line to fall down onto the header and catch some oil on fire. Yeah. So, and
Wow.
even if that had failed, if I had more physical insulation on the outside of that oil line, probably would have bought me a lot more time. If I had 2 points of contact with the engine with this bracket rather than just a single point of bolting it on, might have lasted longer. So yeah, there's some things that I did wrong in the construction of it. And I'm exceedingly fortunate that I was allowed to learn these lessons rather than just be a lesson for everyone else. Let's put it that way. The car will survive. I mean, I'm looking at the car. It's on the lift right outside my office window here. It's getting the new motor. The old motor was actually fine. It needed most of the stuff that burned was all soft stuff. It was wiring and hoses and soft bits. But we had to pull the motor out to clean things up properly. And if you're going to pull a motor out, why aren't you going to put something better back in? So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So does that have any effect on either current or future cars for you and Grassroots Motorsports?
Captain's log supplemental.
So Miss Vicki.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember when we were watching those WRL events and some of those grid life events where you used to see the in-car video and it had like the cameras seeing front and back, but it also could see all the telemetry and everything that was going on?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the ones that we liked were taken by the Sentinel system. Remember James came on our podcast earlier?
Right.
We have no excuse since he lent us one for trial and demonstration purposes. We should actually probably put that in one of our cars, maybe two.
I really think we should.
I think we should.
I know.
Because then we'd look like the immature endurance racing team that we are. Oh, wait, I mispronounced that, didn't I? Sorry, my bad. We could
So what does the
have
Sentinel system do?
we could have 3 cameras with picture in picture. We could have, if we ever get the AIM system to work, open invitation to anybody from AIM to come on and give us a little bit of love. We need some help. And then we could have all our telemetry on there. And then we can have it streamed live into the paddock or around the world to our millions of fans. We're apparently very popular in Kenya right now. Don't know why, but that's fine. And it can integrate all the available race statistics from like Race Hero and everything. So we could actually see how we're doing on video. We wouldn't even have to carry around our phone anymore. Live.
I love it.
No, it's just going to sort of change the timeline a little bit.
I meant like how you do the builds or how you assess the builds.
I would like to tell you that it shouldn't have any effect because we're always doing all of our builds to the highest standards of safety and professionalism. But I mean, just like everybody else, we can make mistakes as well. And every time you do, you learn something from it. And I think the big things I'm going to take away from this are that, yeah, it might be hot in Florida, but wearing that driver's suit for a track session is not nearly as hot as being engulfed in flames.
Especially if you have a cool suit.
Yeah, exactly. And also, yeah, single points of failure. While you might get away with them for a very, very long time, faster you go and the longer you drive, the more stress that stuff is under. And that's going to be especially important when I'm building this tube frame thing, because literally every part on there is going to be something that I'm going to have to engineer from scratch. And might have been a good wake up call for me to have a minor failure now rather than a major failure later on something even faster and scarier. So, I think I think how it's going to affect future builds is we're out here learning stuff just like everybody else, and just like everybody else, although we shouldn't, occasionally we get lazy too, and it's not an easy thing to admit. It's not something I am proud of. I certainly wish that I could tell you that I was not wearing shorts and a t-shirt during a track session, but I was, and it was dumb. And I don't want to be that guy that tells you, hey, safety is important, while I am not being an example of how important it is. So yeah, I think what this affects going forward is every once in a while you need a kick in the ass wake up call, and I'm glad this one wasn't more. It was enough to wake me up, not enough to throw me out the window from the bed. So.
That's awesome. We're getting, I mean, you don't really have a racing season down by you, but we're getting towards the end of the northern climate racing season. It's not quite over, but it's not as far away as we'd like it to be. So we thought, with all the experience that you guys have and all the work you guys have done, we could get into a little bit about converting a road car to become a track car. You guys have done that a bunch. You guys have done that to cars and aiming at different levels. Yeah. The Fox being kind of towards the lower end, yeah. the Corvette a little slightly more performance than the Fox. I mean, I'm not insulting Tom, our former podcast guest, but I think in a drag race, we know where that's going to end up. And so is there any kind of tips, tricks, planning stuff that you guys do that you found to be successful?
I'd love to tell you every project car is different, but to some extent, every project car is also the same. We typically are buying our project cars used as well, so we face the same challenges that most everybody does. In general, we are not. We've started very few of our project cars with already prepared cars. Most of them have been just street cars that we've converted. So we actually, it keeps coming up in editorial meetings that, like, at some point we need to buy somebody else's race car and write about what it takes to go racing in a car that's already a race car, and is that a good idea? At the same time, we don't want to use that to embarrass somebody out there who's much worse at it than us, which again, as we've shown, maybe we're not as good at this as we always thought. But yeah, so in general, we're facing a lot of the same challenges that anybody is in preparing a car. And personally, like when I'm preparing a car for track use, I want to look at the stuff that is going to keep me out of trouble the most. I love a car with good brakes, and in Florida, it's very humid here. We have a lot of problems with moisture. So typically, everything that you buy from somebody, and even stuff that we own, that brake fluid rarely lasts longer than about 18 months around here, just because it's so humid and there's so much moisture that we find we go through a lot of brake fluid down here. And yeah, bad brakes will get you in trouble really, really fast. So that's usually something that sees attention very early on in the process, is getting the brakes to a point where, like, I don't care what else is going on with the car, as long as I can stop at some point, I'm pretty happy. So and also I think brakes are sort of an underrated performance tool. I mean, you think about it, I don't care how powerful your car is, your brakes are the most powerful speed changing device on your car. So you need to treat them as a system of the car that affects your speed and doesn't just slow you down. So my approach generally is to get good brakes on something before I want to go do a lot of track stuff with it. Obviously, tires are going to be important, most everything, but tires are a fairly known quantity these days. We know there's 5, 6, 7, or 8 brands out there at any given time that are good, that are known. We know the characteristics of all of them. We know what they fit on. We know how they like to drive. So there's no real mystery in tires anymore. There's plenty of data out there, whether it's from our tire test or just from your friends at the track and how tires work. So you're going to be putting tires on something fairly often if you're living a track lifestyle. So that's not a real hard decision with a lot of mystery attached. And aside from that, you sort of approach the modification process of a car in, aiming at the low hanging fruit first. Is it something that's got terrible handling, or something that is very under tired, that can fit a much bigger wheel and get a lot more rubber on the ground, or something that has a very unfortunate gear ratio that can be either dealt with in an easy way with tire diameter, or in a much harder and more expensive way, but through gearing. So you kind of look at that low hanging fruit first, but I would say brakes are usually a priority for me. Fitment in the car is usually a priority for me, especially with the Corvette. A stock Corvette seat and steering wheel is just a terrible place to drive a Corvette from. But so that's something that I'm always kind of looking at to improve on most of my cars. And then it just kind of comes down to looking at the rules of whatever class you're intending to compete in, or if there's no rules, and you want to keep it a street car, looking for how extreme you want to go and still be able to drive the thing to work every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the first of my articles that I have here is ways to test your car's aerodynamics at home without like a wind tunnel or anything fancy like that. I know Johnny C probably has this down pat, but
so I learned some really cool tricks from a guy who is a good friend of ours. In fact, I knew this guy back when he lived in Daytona, a fellow named Steve Stafford, who was actually dating my wife before she and I had even met. Steve and I were friends because we're kind of members of the local sports car community, and he went off to go work for a couple of big companies in their NASCAR and IndyCar developments. And then I met my wife and or the woman that would become my wife, and we just kind of got talking and realized, like, oh my God, like this guy that I've known for years, like somehow you and I never ran across each other before. Anyway, she made the horrible decision to marry me and not him, but we've still managed to get a lot of great information from him. And before he was in the NASCAR and IndyCar departments of this major manufacturer, he was doing Aero tricks on everybody's local improved touring cars. And this is even before the Lemons days. Like he was the guy that knew all of the Aero tricks, and we've learned a lot of really cool stuff from him that you can do very cheaply. And that article you're referencing is, I think that's available online now. And we just used like a $60 Magni-Helic gauge, which is a device that sort of can show you the difference in air pressure from one area to another. And all you're really looking for is ways to either lower or raise the air pressure in specific areas of the car. If you want to make downforce, you want to raise the air pressure on top of the car relative to the pressure under the car. And you can just find ways to do that by directing the air through the use of spoilers and vents and blocking off certain pieces of airflow, and either creating or eliminating turbulence. And working with that equipment actually really did a lot to demystify aerodynamics for me. Aero is not, it's not the black. I mean, way out there on the edge of performance, yeah, it's kind of a black art. But the basics of Aero are fairly simple. You're trying to create more pressure in one area than another, and that's going to affect how the car works.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that has always prevented us from Aero is not the back of the car, but the front of the car, because we're always worried that the splitter is going to fall off, and it's either going to wreck our car or wreck the unfortunate people who somehow are behind us who knew that happened. But occasionally,
well,
they
yeah,
haven't passed us yet, so
but that's why the best splitters are plywood. I mean, because last time I checked, Home Depot didn't sell carbon fiber. So actually, I went to a press event with Lotus many years ago when they were bringing out the Exige S, like the supercharged Exige, and it had, right in the press materials, the splitter on the Exige S was made from, I think they called it a layered organic composite. And it was a plywood splitter. And like literally when you bought an Exige S, they would give you a template of how to cut your own splitter that you would, because you would inevitably destroy the thing at a track day or just pulling it onto or off of your trailer. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of the plywood splitter. The wind doesn't know what your splitter is made out of, so why should you care?
Wood's got carbon in it, and it's fibrous. It's a type of carbon fiber.
Brilliant. Lowe's has a giant. They have a whole row of splitters at Lowe's,
and they can be sanded. They can be, whatever you want. Sounds like a plan to me. I see no issues with that. We're gonna have to go to the Lowe's or Home Depot of choice and get some carbon fiber.
Yeah,
works for me.
Yeah, a little bit of unistrut, and you're good to go.
Exactly. And then we got to make sure we secure it to the car so it doesn't decide to become a frisbee flying around the track at X miles an hour. But on the I did notice that on the article you have a separate article on just how to do the part that I was really worried about, and I didn't notice it until I printed it out. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I print things out and I push on the links on the paper, it doesn't doesn't work. So I'm gonna have to go back.
You need to upgrade your paper, Bill.
I know my paper is just wrong. It's carbon fiber, so it's what it is. So Miss Vicki, you're constantly getting besieged by me with all these tire testing results and which tires we should use and what pressure we should use. You know why you get besieged by that?
Why is that?
Because Grassroots Motorsports has all these tire testing things. So you have one of our future podcast guests who doesn't know it yet, has not acknowledged anything about any of the times we've tried to contact him. We're going to get him. You have one Mr. Andy Hollis who does most of them, if not all of them.
And Andy has he's actually been traveling quite a bit, so that's probably why he's not been great on
it's fine
on return messages. But yeah, he is a fantastic asset to us, as well as just being a really, really cool guy and interesting to hang out with. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Andy Hollis was one of the original founders, basically, of a company called MicroPros that was, I think they were a video game company, and I think
flight simulator, right?
Yeah, flight simulators. F-15 Fighting Eagle, I think, was their big title. So yeah, a lot of modern video gaming can trace its roots right to one Mr. Andy Hollis. And
I bet his mom told him not to play with video games. You're never going to get anywhere, and it seems to have worked out for him.
So yeah, he did all right for himself, and lucky, although he's not really a trained engineer, he has this very sort of engineer's mind and this very logical and structured approach to things. And he's also an exceptionally good driver as well. So he's kind of a multifaceted threat, and he's able to sort of control his attitude towards driving enough that he is an exceptional tester of products and tires. And that's a particular, that's a skill that you either are born with, or you have to spend a lot of time developing. It's not something that comes extremely naturally to a lot of people. So yeah, we're lucky to have him as a resource, and because of him, we are, I think, highly regarded as an organization that, as soon as a new tire is released, we generally will have a set available to us that we can test on a repeatable course under repeatable conditions in a fairly scientific way, and produce some pretty good data. I mean, I know every time we do a tire test, if we do it on a Miata, the Camaro guys complain. If we do it on a big car, the little car guys complain. But you try to make the data as relevant as you can to as many people. But we also are in touch with the marketplace enough to know how to fill in those gaps in our testing with qualified anecdotal information when we do find out about it. So yeah, that's definitely Andy is a great resource and a source of pride for a service that I think we're able to provide to the marketplace with the tire testing.
Yeah, and I'm not going to give you the what could be a fruitless endeavor, because new tire comes out and the list comes out, and the shuffle of the order, whatever. But I guess the importance for some of our listeners who don't, maybe they're not into tires as much, the difference roughly between like a decent road tire and a good like 200 treadwear tire in terms of a lap time, and lap times vary, but they're usually around 100 seconds or something, can be, what would you estimate that?
Well, I mean, it's significant. In fact, one of the tests we're actually putting together right now is like a typical sporty road tire, like a 260, 280 treadwear road tire versus a modern 200 treadwear track or autocross type tire, to see exactly what that difference is. But I would say, it's a measurable percentage. It's the difference. I'd put it this way: the difference between a 200 treadwear track tire or autocross tire and a full R comp competition tire, like a Hoosier or a Goodyear RSR, that difference is less than the difference between a 200 treadwear tire and a sporty street tire, a 260 or 300 treadwear tire. I would also say that as much effort as we put into tire testing, and most of our tire testing centers around 200 treadwear tires, because that's the bulk of the marketplace right now. That's what most people are interested in, and that's where most of the movement in the marketplace is right now. There's more tires being introduced in that segment than any other. But the real truth is the difference in those tires, and when I say those tires, I mean whatever the 4, 5, or 6 most popular brands are out there. Like right now, it would be like Falcon, Yokohama, Nankang has a good tire. Bridgestone has the new RE71 RS. The difference in the top tier of 200 treadwear tires, the objective difference in those tires is actually far less than the difference in the driving talent of the people using those tires. So unless don't think that changing tires will magically make you a better driver. And that's a trap that some people fall into, is like, well, I got my ass kicked by 4 seconds, but I'm on, I'm not on the hot tire right now, so I'm just gonna go buy the new hot tire, and then I'll be competitive. Not necessarily. There might be some other things you want to work on before worrying about those tires, because everything out there is pretty darn good right now, and we see that every year at Solo Nationals, where there's going to be 1 or 2 hot tires of the moment, but then you see a guy like a couple of years ago, Brian Heitkoder went out and won a championship on Nankang tires before they were the hot thing to have. So yeah, there's a lot of companies out there building really, really good stuff, and the difference between all of that really good stuff, Yes, there are objective differences, but those objective differences tend to be fairly minor when viewed in the overall difference of the talent pool of most of us out there.
Yeah, and then as far as that goes, we're still on the steep side of the learning curve, so we're still working on getting things under the driver capability. So we give up, some time on each lap by getting. We typically do the Hankook RS4s, but they just last forever and keep our costs down while we're learning, because the reason we're not winning is us and not the seconds that a tire could save. And we just save our money, and someday will be worth spending decent tire money on, but not right now.
Yeah, I mean, how many seconds are you changing the fact, or are you saving the fact that you don't have to change those tires as often? Every time you pull a wheel off the car, every time you pull a wheel off the car, that's another person that you had to have at the track and feed and house that person. That's 5 more bolts that you could drop or lose or cross thread. Right. So yeah, you might give up a second a lap, but you are also preventing the possibility of a race ending disaster to some extent. Yeah.
And the odds on us wearing one out before somebody on our team flat spots one, much lower. Much lower.
Right. Guilty.
Yeah. We had a bad race weekend one time. It was we went 7 for 8 out of our tires. Oof. So that was lovely.
Ouch.
Yeah, not so good.
And grippy brakes.
That's one side of the equation.
No, anyway. Grippy brakes.
Sure. Sounds good. Our brakes work too good. Anyway. So I guess you've got a unique perspective of the market and of the performance driving that most of us don't have, because you tend to interact with all levels in terms of racing, and also in terms of the manufacturers and the suppliers, and you kind of get a better perspective than I think most people would have. And I was just curious what your thoughts were as far as performance driving goes. Not that long ago, nobody could get onto a track because it just wasn't available, or they didn't know about it, and that seems to largely has diminished, if not gone to zero. But what are you seeing that you think are things that are factors that are improving the area of performance driving and or racing, and things that are going in the wrong direction that you see?
So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. You say that how it's easier to get on track now than ever. It's absolutely true. In my entire life, it is the Aero for how easy it is to get on track has always been heading in the same direction, and that is that it is now more accessible than at any previous time in my life, and it seems to be able to continue along that route, and to the point now where occasionally you go on social media and you'll start to see a lot more people gatekeeping, like, hey, maybe we have too many people on track now, maybe it's too easy to get on track now. And I think that kind of comes as a result of the fact that as it's become easier to get on track, cars have become exponentially faster than they were even 10 years ago. I mean, how many 500 horsepower cars are out there in the marketplace right now? How many 300 horsepower minivans are out in the marketplace right now? So yeah, we do have much less trouble getting on track, but we're also getting on track with things that can get us in over our heads very, very rapidly. So yeah, I don't tend to have any answers for that, other than I think still, if you look at the total number of incidents that are taking place during organized track use, it's fairly low. I mean, I think we probably think more about it because it's a smaller community, and it also kind of tends to be that, like, when something goes wrong on track, when something goes wrong at 120 miles an hour, it's going to be worse than when something goes wrong at 40 miles an hour, going down a street somewhere. So, and we're sort of in that world. So as soon as something does go wrong, we all kind of hear about it on social media. So we're a little more attuned to be aware of things that go wrong. But yeah, I think the access is overwhelmingly a positive for everybody. I think the one of the great things about the way that we're all so easily connected with each other. I mean, there's three people sitting here on a screen talking to each other and looking at each other. Well, I could just as easily be a driver and you could be a driver coach, and that third screen could be data from a last, a recent track session that we're reviewing. You have this access to affordable and easy data acquisition. I mean, I'm on the shelf behind me. I'm charging this up for tomorrow. This is an Apex Pro, which is for a few $100, you've got a very powerful piece of data gathering equipment that suction cups into a car in a matter of seconds. And that's not the only one on the market. There's half a dozen things on the market that do a very similar thing. So we have this incredibly democratized access to a lot of information, to a lot of very smart people, and we can communicate with them over great distances, just as though they were there. I mean, I've done coaching sessions with people going both directions, either giving advice or getting advice via, iChat or FaceTime while I'm at the track with somebody who's, half a country away. So the resources for being able to go faster and do it safer are also better than they've ever been. So as this access to actual track time increases, so do the resources surrounding that access that make the experience better. I would say anybody who's serious about driving on track and doing it safely and increasing their skills and ability, invest a little bit of money in even the most basic of data gathering equipments, because the data will never ever lie to you. You can tell your crew chief or your coach you were full throttle through
I was flat.
turn 4. I was flat on the floor.
That's
and
right.
if the data is telling a different story, boy, the data is going to be the one that wins every time. So it is this is these pieces of data gathering equipment are even just themselves fantastic learning tools, and then coupled with somebody that knows how to interpret that data. And I think it's also important that every once in a while, whoever is interpreting that data not be you. It's important. It's important to hear this from somebody else. There's a level of accountability that only exists when you're getting information from an outside source, from a trusted outside source. So we can go faster than ever. Well, we can get on track easier than ever, but we also have the tools more easily accessible to do it safely today than we ever have.
So what's the Grassroots Motorsports $2,000 challenge?
It's a horrible idea that nobody should ever participate in.
Who thought of that?
So it literally started as a lunchtime conversation. It was really, I think this was 1998, 1999. We're having lunch at the office one day, and Tim said, all right, so everybody's getting a $1,500 bonus. But there is a catch. You've got to go out and you've got to buy and build a car, and we're going to go autocross it and drag race it, and we're going to see who can go the fastest. I think I can do a better job at this than you guys, and you guys being David Wallens and myself. So we did that. This was sort of in the early days of having a website. We just we're talking about it on the chat board on our website, and our readers were like, hey, this sounds fun. Can we come? Can we do this too? So we were like, yeah, sure. You're going to get your ass kicked because we're professionals. And so we invited our readers. We had 30 or 40 people show up to do this, and they absolutely kicked our asses. I think the three, Tim and David, I don't think any of us finished higher than like 5th or 6th. In the event the first year, and this was like a distant 5th or 6th. And then that was the next year was 2000, so it was like 2000 was a big thing at the time, so let's make it a $2,000 challenge. and it just kind of took off. So yeah, the point is, you've got a $2,000 budget to go and purchase and prepare a car for autocross, drag race, and a car show. And there are certain rules within that structure that allow you to recoup some of the value of the car from selling parts off of it. You can actually, if you can document enough part sales, you can actually zero the value of the car out and then use that budget to go back into the build. The knock against it tends to be, people think that there's sort of rampant cheating and book cooking and accounting anomalies. And as somebody who's been there at every event, going on 20 plus years now, I can tell you that the thing that these people are doing that is creative is not their accounting. It's the fact that they are putting a level of labor and a level of dedication into these builds that is absolutely alien to the rest of us. And so yeah, it's not about creative accounting. It's about an absolute and total dedication to the build. And if you're not going to swap meets 15 weekends in a row trying to find the right combination of parts, if you're not going to events and testing different combinations of stuff to figure out what works best together, if you're not spending evenings and weekends hand fabricating pieces to be as light and as effective as they possibly can be, you're just not going to be competitive. And so it really doesn't come down to creative accounting. It comes down to just fanatical devotion to the build.
So what's the Zamboni rule?
That was actually put in as kind of a joke that we didn't want people bringing essentially formula cars that they had thrown bodies on. We kind of wanted everything to be production based. So I think there was a rule in there at one point that we don't want any formula cars, sports racers, or Zambonis. And somebody actually went and found a used Zamboni at an auction somewhere and used that as the basis of their build. And it was, I think that there was a lot of Miata parts underneath it, but a lot of the chassis was the original Zamboni chassis that they sort of grafted a lot of other stuff. There was Mustang stuff and Miata stuff. And so I think they showed up knowing that they were actually mentioned in the rule book as being illegal, but because it so clearly met the spirit of the event, I think they were allowed to compete. But they had a whole production associated with it. They had dry ice when they rolled the thing out, and they all had hockey mullets, and it was a brilliant thing. And so that car is actually going to be at Solo Nationals this year. In fact, two of our former challenge cars are going to be at Solo Nationals this year. I'm really excited to see them. A lot of them have gone on to live lives in other venues. But yeah, I think the thing that really every year impresses me is the fact that it really isn't about the budget. I mean, I cannot stress enough how none of these budgets are really even getting into the realm of questionable. What is questionable is I do not know how there are enough hours in the day for these folks to do what they do. And we'll even get emails like, well, I want to compete in this, but my wife only lets me work a couple hours a week on the car. And you have to tell people like, dude, this is not the my wife only lets me work a couple hours a week on the car challenge. This is the what are you willing to do to build something amazing given very little financial resources, and the only resources are what is your ability to create something from nothing. And yeah, turns out the ability among our readers is fairly astounding in some cases.
Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be part of our podcast if we didn't make a suggestion or two. So
okay.
So we were thinking that we're feeling left out and neglected from this challenge, and we think there should be a track aspect, perhaps a time attack at a local track. I mean, just to complete the round robin nature of this.
So we have considered that. We've actually looked at. So the event takes place at Gainesville Raceway every year. There's a good pad for autocross. Of course, there's a drag strip, and we have our main road course test facility is 45 minutes away. The Florida International Rally and Motorsports Park. So we have considered, somehow adding a track component to the challenge as well. I'll say this: it's on the table every single year. It's not something that we have been able to get the financial support to make it logistically possible, because it requires us to relocate the entire show from one place to another.
Right.
But it is something that comes up every year. And in fact, this year we're probably making the greatest strides towards that being a potential part of the future by opening the event up to $2,000 plus builds. And that's purely a way to get more people with cool builds to come out and be able to exercise their cars in sort of a biathlon environment. They get to run both a drag race and an autocross on the same day, and they get to see how well their high dollar build stacks up against a $2,000 build. So yeah, we have learned in recent years that we have the capacity to run more cars through the event. So we're taking that opportunity to expand the event a little bit. And yeah, with maybe not necessarily the stated goal on the table of doing a road course, but that is something that whenever challenge planning begins for the year, it's like, hey, is this the year we go to the firm or schedule a firm day before or after? But so yeah, that is. I would like that as much as you would, and I hope at some point in the future there's a way to make that possible.
That would be awesome. Not that we're good enough to build anything that would even be close to compete, but it's always fun. So I've got another article, sir. Another one fresh off, just printed. Links aren't working. This carbon fiber. Anyway, you guys got to race in the Pirelli World Challenge Series.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was another one of those sort of bucket list things that you kind of realize, like, wow, I should have appreciated this more when it was happening. But it was also kind of an awakening. So to just provide some background, we built a B-Spec car a few years ago, and we were kind of on the B-Spec train before it was cool. B-Spec
Sunday Cup for everybody too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think B-Spec today is probably bigger than it's ever been. But when B-Spec first started, there was a pro component to it in that B-Spec also ran as part of the Pirelli World Challenge. So as part of our B-Spec build, we wanted to go do a pro race just to see what it was like. And it was pretty cool. But at the same time, it was like, wow, racing costs a lot of money when you're doing it professionally. Like there are all of these things.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's like, oh wait, we need this flagging system that flashes the yellow light when there's full course yellow, and like the next thing you know, you're dropping $3,500 on like the next required thing you have to have, or like, oh yeah, we need this data recorder's got to be in the car, and you can rent it for $2,000 this weekend, and like, this is an expensive sport. And nowhere is that more clear than at the professional level. Now, on the other hand, at the pro level, you realize that it's a lot like the film. Have you guys ever been on a film set, like a real working film set?
I have not.
So the first thing you notice when you go onto a film set is it seems like there's a lot of people standing around doing nothing. And the truth is they are standing around doing nothing, because their job is, when one specific thing goes wrong, they are there with no other distractions to fix that thing. Because if they don't, the entire film that costs tens of millions of dollars to produce could come to a screeching halt and fail completely. So pro racing is a lot like that. It is a produced piece of content for for the entertainment of the spectators. So everything has to happen in a very orderly fashion. And because of that, there are a lot of redundancies in personnel. There's a lot of redundancies in equipment. There's a lot of redundancies in sort of logistical practices that ensure that everything happens on a time certain basis, exactly when it's supposed to, for exactly as long as it's supposed to. And nobody is, running to grid, getting their shoes tied, at the last minute. Like, you are where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be, or you
Right.
are not taking part in this. So you have enough people involved in your effort to make sure that you are where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be. Anything that broke between the last time you were where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be, has gotten fixed in a quick and orderly fashion.
Mhm.
So that was really interesting. And also the racing is competed at a high level. I did the race at Mid Ohio, and it was actually during the IndyCar weekend, and I think World Challenge was there, and there were like IndyCars there, and I'm actually sitting there like belted in on the pre-grid. We're on the pre-grid, waiting to go out to the real grid. And this guy walks by and looks at me and says, "Hey, you going to get groceries in this thing after the race?" And I look at him, it's Mario Andretti. And I was like, wow, okay, so that's pretty cool. Like here I'm at a race and like Mario Andretti's busting my balls. Like how much cooler does it get than that? Like there's not many levels of cool beyond that. So it is really cool that like you get to compete in these venues that you normally wouldn't, and you actually get to compete in front of people who, when cool stuff happens, especially when you're in a B-spec car that's not very loud, you get to hear them cheer, either for you or for the person that's passing you or the person you're passing. But like it's really cool to have that immediate feedback of like, oh wow, I did something that made somebody on that hill feel a positive emotion. Like that's pretty cool.
So we're building a B-spec car.
Nice. What kind?
It's a fit.
Okay.
So, it's new. I mean, nobody's ever built a fit for B-spec ever. So, but Miss Vicki doesn't quite see the light for this. She's
you know what? I just got my bagpipe horn.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like B-spec cars are slow, and we had to run with like a 25 millimeter restrictor in this Ford Fiesta, and it was dog slow. But the brake, they weigh nothing, and the brakes are unbelievable. Like the cars just by the time your foot actually gets to the bottom of the brake travel, that car is stopped. That's the most fun thing about B-spec cars, is like going into a corner next to somebody and you're going so slow that you're kind of looking at each other, like talking to each other, like, hey, you gonna brake yet? No. How about you? Yep, you gonna brake? Oh, why don't you brake now, man? No, you go first. And like you're getting closer and closer to the corner. And like finally you just end that game of chicken by standing on the brakes and stopping in a matter of feet. So that's the fun of B-spec right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so that's the excitement. Because I don't know really what I'm going to be expecting when I race this car. I just know I'm going to be racing this really tiny car.
I mean, if you're out there with other B-spec cars, it's a momentum battle. Again, as little work as you can do behind the wheel to keep those tires as happy as possible. Because every time those tires are turned half a degree more than they need to be to negotiate that corner, you are losing speed to friction. So you basically just maximize the things that can do well. They stop on a dime. They go around corners fairly well, and they make
fairly well is what makes me nervous.
Right. But they also make, most of them anyway, make giant holes in the wind. So when you've got no horsepower but a giant brick in front of you, drafting actually becomes a real battle on longer tracks, and even on medium tracks like Mid Ohio. There's realistic places to draft, especially if there's minis out there. If you're driving a fit, be prepared to see a line of minis behind you, like you're leaving a Starbucks or something. So
it's tucked in that little hole that a punching. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the fun of B-Spec.
So, sir, we were just wondering if there was any upcoming articles or projects that you are free to discuss to entice people to go read your fine magazine and website.
Yeah, I mean, there's always cool stuff coming up. So I'm actually, while I'm on the road, I'm going to be shipping the November issue of Grassroots to the printer, and I'm actually looking at my page files here. We spoke earlier in the podcast about, you know, 5 things I wish I would have told myself 30 years ago. We actually have a whole big section on driving instruction, and
Nice.
you know, it covers a lot of stuff like how to be a good student, you know, how to find speed in, if you can just pick 1 or 2 corners on a track, how do you figure out which 2 corners, you know, the low hanging fruit exist in. So that's a really cool story. Good story about the new NASA Spec E46 class, which is especially in the mid-Atlantic states getting really, really huge. Some good FRS BRZ stuff in there. Another installment of the Aero story. I was actually over at Tom's today and finally got to see all of the machine stuff he's buying. We've been running a really cool set of stories on like how to be your own machine shop, like how to shop for a mill, how to shop for a lathe, and finally got to go lay hands on some of his stuff today. And you know, buying a mill is fairly easy. Moving a mill is a much different different thing. So we've gotten to deal with stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, there's the way we try to work on stuff is we almost try to work on stuff in this sort of time agnostic way where we're always just sort of working on a bunch of stories at once. And when it comes time to get an issue ready, we take the other stuff that's naturally, you know, narratively in line next and put them together and package them and make an issue. So I'm working on a lot of MR2 content. I'm working on some Corvette content. I'm working on some time attack content from a mental approach to time attack and time trial, and how to sort of raise your game when it comes to that, which will also be a very good approach for folks who want to go out and qualify for a road race, because it's essentially the same mindset. So yeah, I mean, not to be too glib about it, but we always have cool stuff going on, and really go to the website and you can kind of see what's going on that day almost. Because stuff kind of gets updated on the website on a daily basis. And that's the other thing we're sort of doing now is we are, as much magazine content as we're doing, we're also getting into a mode where we're doing specific unique content for the website as well. So you might be able to read something online that either hasn't appeared in the magazine yet, or it'll appear in one form on the website. We'll go more in depth on in the print edition, or more in depth on the website. We're gonna provide more background. So we're almost treating the websites as like their own specific publication with its own unique needs of the audience. So that was basically a long way to say, yeah, we're always working on cool stuff. Go to the website and kind of see what's going on, you know, in the immediate future. Although I will say, so actually, by the time this comes out, I will have probably done this. I am getting on a plane in the morning to go drive the new Toyota GR Corolla at Utah Motorsports campus, as well as the Supra with the 6-speed manual. Ooh. And yeah, and from there, I'm going immediately to SCCA Solo Nationals to compete in the Extreme A class in was going to be my MR2, but that's a little bit toasty right now. So I'm borrowing a friend's Corvette to compete in that, which is certainly a platform I have some familiarity with. So yeah, starting a bit of a road trip here, but I get to drive some cool stuff on that road trip, and I'm really excited about those Toyotas.
Well, we are wishing you good luck at Nationals, and by the time this comes out, hopefully we'll be able to have said congratulations and be accurate about it. But yeah. It should be fun. And
yeah, I'm going into it not really with low expectations, but with very few expectations. It's a new class that I'm actually sort of taking a bit of a leadership role in, to kind of help steer the class a little bit. I think it's going to be a class that's good for autocrossing. It's It's essentially a build whatever the heck you want and run it on 200 treadwear tires, and it needs to be, have roughly street legal equipment on it. So it's kind of a builder's class. It's a class where people are going to be able to express themselves, I think, creatively. So it's something I'm kind of excited to be a part of, both as a driver and as somebody, hopefully helping guide things into the future.
Okay. Well, we don't offer many tips to people who have the experience you have, but if you were going to be looking to add a large chocolate chip cookie to the top of your car, we would recommend
you know where to hook me up.
Yeah, we have one if you need it, but we would say
look,
no.
if I need a cookie, I know exactly where to go, and maybe we should do. We have a great facility to do cookie on, cookie off testing at.
Nobody's done that yet.
Yeah. we might bring you down for that.
No worries, not a problem. We'll bring our own cookie. It's not a problem. We have this done. No problem. Thank you, sir, for coming on, and good luck. And
thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate it. We're anytime we can get out, and part of the reason I'm looking forward to nationals next week is I get to see a lot of my friends, and it really is fun to be. It's fun to be able to help out my friends in a way to sort of bring them more information about stuff they love to do. So, anytime we get a chance to do something like this, it's a lot of fun too.
Yep. We share that opinion, and hopefully we succeed even a small fraction of what you guys have done over the years.
Who passes up a chance to talk about themselves for a couple hours? My God.
You'd be surprised. It's really weird. The people, like, we had a bucket list of people when we started, and we were like, these would be awesome. And like the ones that are like, the high perspective, what you would think are the impossible ones to get, those are easy. Yeah. It's the ones in the middle, or the little ones, they don't respond at all.
Yeah.
But
it's
weird. It's like upside down.
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of when I'm not doing this stuff, I do, I'm involved in the performing arts a little bit. I do a lot of stand up. I do a lot of improv, some straight theater. I've been involved in that kind of stuff for a long time. So I'm used to, for lack of a better word, putting on a show constantly. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you're not getting the real me, because I don't really, the character I play is basically me. Mm-hmm. But I also understand that like that skill and that desire also generally comes with like other great psychological deficiencies that like normal people don't always want to do this kind of stuff. And I get that. Like, so when somebody says, hey, do you want to like come up here and expose yourself to the world? Like, that's something a lot of us maybe think more about. So yes, if I leave you with one thing, be cautious who you're exposing yourself to. Maybe
that's words to live by, sir.
That's great.
Well, thank you, sir. And we will have links to your website, and awesome. We will have everything on the podcast episode, so people who are driving do not have to run into a bridge abutment.
Yeah. If you're driving, please don't. Yeah, there's no visual component to this. Please watch the road. Look out! Please pay attention. I do not want to be the reason that you caught on fire. I want to be the reason that you stayed out of fire.
It's a much better side of the equation. I agree.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You have a great night.
Yeah, you do the same, Bill and Vicki. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. I bet it's really hot down there.
It is, but
it's a wet heat.
Yeah, it's awful. It's literally from April through the end of October. You just get used to doing